Jay Vance never lost things. At least, that's what he told himself. His entire career was built on precision, whether it was the way he played his bass, the way he arranged his home studio, or the way he curated his public image. Losing something as cutting-edge as his Apple lenses? That was out of the question. And yet, here he was, standing outside Ember Lounge, one of the trendiest underground clubs in downtown San Francisco, patting down his pockets in a panic. His Apple lenses, sleek, lightweight, and worth more than some people's cars, were gone. "Dude, you sure you had them on when we got out of the Uber?" his friend Miles asked, swaying slightly, still buzzed from their last round of cocktails. Jay exhaled sharply. "Yeah, I was checking my messages with them right before we got inside." Miles scratched his chin. "Then they must be inside. Let's go back in and look." They turned toward the entrance, but the bouncer, arms folded, a silent wall of muscle, shook his head. "Club's closed," he grunted. Jay wasn't having it. "I just left my lenses in there, man. Come on, I'll be quick." The bouncer sighed, clearly used to dealing with late-night pleaders. "Staff already cleaned up. If they found M, they'll turn M in tomorrow. Check back then." Tomorrow? That wasn't an option. Those lenses weren't just expensive, they were his. Customized with his personal settings, logged into his cloud, filled with everything from unfinished music projects to private messages. Jay ran a frustrated hand through his hair. "All right," he muttered, knowing there was no point in arguing. He pulled out his phone and opened Find My Device, but the lenses were offline. Someone must have picked them up. As he and Miles walked toward the curb, a cold breeze cutting through the night, Jay's mind spun with possibilities. He could afford to replace them, sure, but it wasn't about the money. It was about the principle. Someone had his lenses. And Jay Vance didn't like losing things. 2 blocks away, in a dimly lit alley behind a 24-hour diner, Leonard sat on a discarded milk crate, turning the futuristic-looking lenses over in his hands. He wasn't a tech guy. Didn't have a phone. Didn't even have a place to sleep most nights. But he knew enough to recognize that these weren't your average pair of sunglasses. Leonard had found them lying on the pavement outside the club when he was making his way toward the diner's back entrance, hoping to scavenge some leftovers before the staff threw them out. At first, he thought they were just another piece of junk. But when he picked them up, he saw the tiny Apple logo on the side. His first thought was, these gotta be worth something. Maybe enough for a night in a motel. Maybe even enough for a couple of nights. It had been a brutal week, the San Francisco chill sinking into his bones, and he was getting tired of fighting just to stay warm. But then, curiosity got the better of him. He slipped the lenses onto his face. For a second, nothing happened. Just a weird weight on his nose. Then, a faint glow flickered in his vision. And suddenly, he could see things. Words. Symbols. Floating notifications. A name. Jay Vance. Leonard frowned. The name sounded familiar. Then it hit him. The musician. Even on the streets, he'd heard Jay Vance's name before. The guy was a legend in the alt-rock and electronic music scene. Even if Leonard wasn't up to date with the latest music trends, he remembered seeing a Rolling Stone cover a few months ago in a gas station window. The title had read, "The Genius of Jay Vance, Reinventing Sound in the Digital Age." Leonard exhaled, the cold air making his breath visible. He had something valuable. Not just valuable in dollars, but valuable to someone. And for the first time in a long while, he felt something strange. A tug of conscience. Did he really want to sell these? Or should he find a way to return them? He sighed, rubbing his gloved hands together for warmth. It wasn't an easy decision. But deep down, he already knew what he was going to do. He was going to find Jay Vance. Even if it meant nothing changed for him, at least he'd know he did the right thing. Leonard didn't have a phone. Didn't have a computer. Hell, he barely had a reliable spot to sleep. But what he did have was instinct. And right now, instinct told him that if Jay Vance was famous, Then someone around here knew where he was. So he started asking around. The first guy he approached, a street vendor selling bacon-wrapped hot dogs, barely looked up from his grill. Jay Vance? You mean that musician guy? Yeah, Leonard said, shoving his hands into his coat pockets. Any idea where he hangs out? The vendor gave him a look. Man, I sell hot dogs. Not celebrity locations. Strike one. Leonard tried again, this time with a group of younger guys outside a vape shop. They were hunched over their phones, laughing at something. Hey, Leonard said, stepping closer. You guys know Jay Vance? One of them, a kid with bleached blonde hair and a septum piercing, glanced up. Duh. He was just at Ember Lounge tonight. Leonard's pulse kicked up. Where's he now? Blonde kid narrowed his eyes. Why do you care? Leonard hesitated. He knew how he looked, grimy, unshaven, wearing clothes that had seen better years. If he said I found his $3,500 Apple lenses and want to give them back, they'd probably think he was lying. So he shrugged. Just looking for him. Blonde kid smirked. He's probably at the Nova Hotel. That's where all the rich musicians crash after partying downtown. That was enough for Leonard. Thanks, he muttered, already turning away. He had a destination. Leonard walked fast, keeping his head down against the wind. The Nova Hotel was about 10 blocks away, one of those sleek, glass-covered high-rises that looked way too expensive for someone like him to step into. By the time he got there, his fingers were numb, and his stomach was growling. But he ignored both. The lobby was bright and modern, filled with people who looked like they'd just walked off a magazine cover. A chandelier overhead cast a golden glow, and the front desk had a line of well-dressed guests checking in. Leonard hesitated at the entrance. He looked down at himself. Ripped jeans, scuffed boots, a hoodie he'd found in a donation bin last week. He didn't belong here. Security would probably kick him out before he even made it to the desk. But he wasn't turning back now. Taking a deep breath, he stepped inside. A security guard near the entrance spotted him immediately, eyes narrowing. Leonard saw the guy reach for his radio, probably ready to call someone over. Act normal, Leonard told himself. Walk with purpose. He moved toward the front desk, ignoring the stares, and cleared his throat. The woman behind the counter, a redhead with sharp cheekbones, barely glanced up. Checking in? No, Leonard said. I need to find someone. Jay Vance. That got her attention. Her eyebrows lifted. Sir, we don't give out guest information. I'm not asking for his room number. I just need to talk to him. Do you have an appointment? Leonard sighed. No. But I have something that belongs to him. The redhead looked skeptical. What exactly? Leonard reached into his pocket, pulled out the Apple lenses, and held them up. That changed everything. Her eyes widened. Hold on. She picked up her phone and murmured something into it, then motioned toward the lounge area. Wait over there. Leonard did as he was told, sitting in one of the plush leather chairs near the fireplace. He felt out of place, but he forced himself to stay put. Minutes passed. Then, a door near the elevators swung open, and Jay Vance walked out. Jay looked different than Leonard had expected. Less like a rock star, more like a guy who had just rolled out of bed, messy hair, hoodie, sweatpants. But his expression was sharp, eyes flicking around until they landed on Leonard. You're the guy? Jay asked, stopping in front of him. Leonard stood. I guess so. Jay looked him up and down, then at the lenses in Leonard's hand. Where'd you find them? Outside Ember Lounge, Leonard said. I was passing by, saw them on the ground. Jay exhaled, rubbing a hand over his face. Man, I thought they were gone for good. He took the lenses, inspecting them. You could have sold these. Made a few grand easy. Leonard shrugged. Yeah. Jay studied him. But you didn't. No. A pause. Then Jay smiled, a small, genuine thing. Well, damn. That's rare these days. He reached into his pocket, pulled out his wallet and slid out a crisp $100 bill. Here. For the trouble. Leonard hesitated, looking at the money. It was tempting. More than tempting. $100 could mean food for the next week. But something made him shake his head. I didn't do it for that. Jay blinked. Seriously? Leonard stuffed his hands into his pockets. Yeah. Just figured you'd want them back. Jay stared at him for a long moment. Then, slowly, he slid the bill back into his wallet. What's your name? Jay asked. Leonard. You from around here? Leonard chuckled dryly. Kinda. Been on the streets a while. Jay's expression shifted. Something thoughtful, almost troubled. A beat of silence. Then Jay said something that completely threw Leonard off guard. You hungry? Leonard hesitated. What? I was about to grab some food. You wanna eat? Leonard hadn't expected this. He just wanted to return the lenses and go. But his stomach was empty, and the idea of a real meal, something warm, something that didn't come out of a dumpster, was too tempting to ignore. Yeah, Leonard said finally. Yeah, I could eat. Jay grinned. Cool. Let's go. And just like that, the night took an unexpected turn. Leonard followed Jay Vance through the gleaming lobby of the Nova Hotel, feeling more out of place with every step. He was sure any second now, security would grab him by the collar and toss him back onto the streets where he belonged. But Jay walked like he didn't care, like this was just another normal night. They stepped outside, where the air was crisp and electric with city life. Cars hummed down the boulevard, neon signs flickered, and the distant bass of some rooftop party pulsed through the air. Jay slid his hands into his hoodie pocket and glanced at Leonard. So, what do you feel like? Burgers? Sushi? Whatever you want, man. Leonard almost laughed. He hadn't been asked what he wanted in years. Usually, he just took what he could get, half-eaten sandwiches, gas station snacks, whatever food shelters were serving. A burger sounds good, he said after a pause. Jay grinned. Good choice. They walked a couple of blocks to a place called Grillhouse 47, a high-end burger joint where a single meal probably cost more than Leonard had seen in months. The inside was sleek, exposed brick, dim lighting, and waiters in crisp white shirts. Jay led the way to a table near the back, ignoring the curious glances from other customers. A waiter appeared almost instantly. Mr. Vance, good to see you again, he said smoothly. Leonard raised an eyebrow. They know you here? Jay shrugged. I eat out a lot. The waiter turned to Leonard, and for the first time in years, someone in a restaurant actually spoke to him like he belonged there. What can I get for you, sir? Sir? Leonard almost laughed. A cheeseburger, I guess. Fries too? Jay smirked. Dude, get whatever you want. You need a milkshake? A dessert? Go all in. Leonard hesitated. Then, before his old instincts of don't ask for too much kicked in, he nodded. All right. Chocolate milkshake. Jay grinned. Nice. After the waiter left, they sat in silence for a moment. Leonard still wasn't sure why Jay was doing this. Maybe just to feel good about himself. Maybe because he was one of those celebrities who needed a real-life experience to talk about in interviews. Jay leaned back in his seat. So, how'd you end up on the streets? Leonard's jaw tightened. That's a long story. Jay nodded. I got time. Leonard exhaled, running a hand through his scruffy beard. Lost my job. Worked construction for years, but when the company shut down, I couldn't find anything else. Bills stacked up, and next thing I knew, I was out of my apartment. One bad month turns into 2, then 3. And once you're on the street? Man, it's like a trap. You're invisible. Jay didn't look away. He didn't say something cliché like that must have been tough or I can't imagine. He just listened. Leonard swallowed. I had a brother, but we haven't talked in years. Friends too, but they disappeared real quick when things got bad. He chuckled bitterly. You learn real fast who actually gives a damn about you. Jay nodded slowly. Yeah. I get that. Leonard narrowed his eyes. Do you? Jay smirked. People assume money and fame mean you've got it all figured out. But trust me, being rich just means you get a different kind of loneliness. Leonard hadn't expected that. Yeah? Yeah, Jay said, drumming his fingers on the table. People act like they're your best friend when you're on top. But when you strip all that away, most of them wouldn't stick around. Leonard nodded. Sounds familiar. Their food arrived, and for a while, they just ate. Leonard had forgotten what a real meal tasted like. Hot, fresh, filling. He devoured his burger and fries like a starving man, which, in a way, he was. Jay didn't say anything about it. Didn't act like he was doing Leonard some huge favor. He just let him eat. When they were done, Jay leaned back, wiping his hands on a napkin. All right, man. Be real with me. What's next for you? Leonard frowned. What do you mean? Jay shrugged. You brought my lenses back when you could have pawned them. You're not some lost cause, Leonard. You just got dealt a bad hand. So, what do you want to do? Leonard scoffed. What I want to do? Hell, I don't know. I just want to get off the street. Get a damn job again. Feel like a person. Jay tapped his fingers on the table, thinking. All right. All right, what? Jay grinned. I'm gonna help you. Leonard froze. Dude, I don't need. I'm not handing you cash. Jay interrupted. I mean real help. A fresh start. Leonard eyed him warily. What does that even mean? Jay leaned forward. It means I'm getting you a place to stay. A real one. Not a shelter, not a motel, an apartment. Somewhere you can actually live while you get back on your feet. Leonard's heart nearly stopped. You're messing with me. Jay shook his head. Nah, man. Dead serious. Leonard stared at him. His whole life, he'd been taught that if something seemed too good to be true, it probably was. Nobody did stuff like this. Why? Leonard asked. Jay smirked. Because you didn't take my $100. Because you did the right thing when no one was watching. And because, honestly, I've got the money, and I'd rather spend it on something that actually matters. Leonard swallowed hard. He didn't know what to say. Jay pulled out his phone. All right. I've got a friend who runs a property management company. Let's get you a place. Leonard sat there, stunned, as Jay started making calls. This wasn't just a burger. This wasn't just a thanks for returning my lenses. This was a life-changing moment. And for the first time in years, Leonard felt something unfamiliar. Hope. Leonard sat frozen in his seat, staring at Jay like he had just spoken a different language. An apartment? A real place? A bed that wasn't a park bench or the floor of some overcrowded shelter? No one had ever offered him anything like that before. Jay was already tapping away on his phone, making calls like this was just another Wednesday night. Yeah, man. Something in the downtown area. Furnished, if possible. He paused, nodding as he listened. Yeah. Send me the details. Leonard felt like he was in a dream. His whole life, he'd been conditioned to expect the worst. When people did offer help, it was usually temporary. Here's a few bucks, here's a meal, here's a cot for one night. But this was something permanent. Jay glanced up from his phone. All right. My buddy's sending me a list of places. We'll check one out tomorrow. Leonard blinked. Wait. You're serious? Jay smirked. Dude. I don't say things I don't mean. Leonard rubbed his face, overwhelmed. Man. I don't even know what to say. Jay leaned back in his chair, grinning. Say yes. Leonard exhaled, shaking his head in disbelief. I mean, yeah? Of course, yeah. Jay clapped his hands together. Cool. Then it settled. For the first time in years, Leonard felt like his life wasn't just drifting toward another dead end. He felt like maybe, just maybe, he was about to start climbing out of the hole he'd been stuck in. And it all started because of a pair of lost Apple lenses. The next morning, Leonard woke up in a hotel room. Jay had booked it for him, nothing crazy, just a decent place where he could get a real night's sleep before they went apartment hunting. And damn, did it feel good. A bed with actual pillows. A shower with hot water. A door that locked. By noon, Jay picked him up in a sleek black Tesla, casually sipping a coffee. Sleep all right? Leonard buckled his seatbelt, still trying to process all of this. Better than I have in years. Jay grinned. Good. Let's find you a place. The first few apartments were nice, but Leonard still couldn't shake the feeling that he didn't belong in any of them. The idea of having a place again felt surreal, like the second he stepped inside, someone would tell him there'd been a mistake. Jay noticed. You good? Leonard exhaled. Yeah. It's just a lot. Jay nodded. I get it. But trust me, man, this is real. You deserve this. Finally, they found it. A small, one-bedroom apartment in a quiet part of downtown. It wasn't fancy, but it was clean, had a little balcony, and most importantly, it was his. Jay turned to him. This the one? Leonard swallowed hard, looking around the empty space. A fresh start. A real chance. Yeah, he said finally. This is the one. Jay grinned. All right. Let's sign some papers. A week later, Leonard stood in the middle of his new apartment, still trying to believe it was real. Jay had covered the first few months of rent, given him some cash to buy groceries and clothes, and even helped him set up a job interview at a warehouse. But more than that, he had given Leonard something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. One night, Leonard sat on his new couch, staring out at the city skyline. His old life, sleeping on sidewalks, scavenging for food, feeling invisible, felt like a different world. And all of this? All of this happened because he made one choice. He returned a pair of Apple lenses. Leonard smiled to himself. Sometimes, doing the right thing really did pay off. Months later, Leonard was working full-time, saving money, and, most importantly, rebuilding his life. One evening, he saw a man sitting on a sidewalk, shivering in the cold. For a moment, Leonard just stood there. Then he walked over. Hey, man, he said, crouching down. You hungry? The man looked up, startled. Yeah. Leonard nodded. Come on. Let's get you something to eat. And just like that, the cycle continued. Because sometimes, all it took to change a life was a little kindness.